Hello duelists, Hexlax here with the news. Welcome back to This Week in Master Duel. So, last week we definitely saw quite the influx of new things coming in here to Master Duel. We of course got our new selection pack, Rage of Chaos, being the biggest noteworthy change. And of course, last Thursday, we spent a good amount of time not only opening packs, but also playing with Kashtira decks. That's probably going to be the biggest update here to Master Duel in the last week, is the addition of Kashtira and the impact that it has had on both ladder and tournaments. We're going to see, of course, at the end, or towards the end of the video, rather, some tournament lists. We're going to go ahead and take a look at that in the last portion there. And it's pretty interesting to see the impact that Kashtira cards have had in that regard overall. Also noteworthy is, of course, Chaos Angel and Sky Striker Ace Azalea, also acting as relatively generic extra deck options there. In addition to that, we also got our next alternate alt card, that being the Alt Art IP Masquerena. Many duelists have gotten quite frustrated already trying to pull for this secret pack here. If you are interested in obtaining the Alt Art IP Masquerena, make sure that you do so before October 9th, I believe, is how much time you have until the card is no longer going to be available in this secret pack. Much like the Eldritch and Nightmare Unicorn in the past, it is going to be a limited time thing. So if you've already got yours, then, well, you're fairly lucky, myself included. And if not, don't worry, you definitely still have quite a bit of time in order to go ahead and get one there. We have also seen that there is going to be the next event here in Master Duel. That's going to be the Dark versus Light event. This is actually a really cool event. This is the first time I've said this in quite a while, but I really like this event. So the idea here is that you can either play Dark Attribute or Light Attribute, but only monsters of either one of those attributes in your deck. Now, not only are you locked into one of those attributes, but you're also locked into fighting against the other attribute, hence the Dark versus Light, which I think is really cool. I think that offers some extra incentive to try out like techs in each different deck, and it also will definitely have a cool influence on deck building, which is, I think, the main factor when it comes to how good an event is, right? Is like how cool or like how innovative can you get with the deck building, right? And with the Dark versus Light event, there are quite a few different things you can do. I will definitely be covering this event in some capacity with games here on the channel, because I have been brewing and I have quite a few ideas. The long and short of it, I think, is that Dark has a insane extra deck, but Light actually gets a lot of good disruption options. Like, Dark doesn't really have anything in the way of hand traps, but Light has Veiler, Ghost Ogre, and a Biru. You get to play those. But again, Dark has an insane extra deck as far as their options. They have a ton of good generic cards. I'll be experimenting with both, but I'm leaning more towards Dark myself. No, anyway. So, let's see, what else is there as far as Master Duel news in client? We do have the special gem campaign, so, you know, gems are on sale. This does not happen all the time, so it is worth pointing that out when they are on sale. And, oh yes, of course, there is, of course, the Guided by Fate secret pack. If you were ever interested in adventure or magic cards, then there is now a secret pack to pull from for those. I was kind of surprised that Water Enchantress didn't go up to like 2 copies with this most recent ban list change. I actually pulled a second Water Enchantress out of a random pack recently and contemplated keeping it, but ultimately didn't, because it seems like they're not going to lift this card from 1 copy up to 2. They might in the near future, and if they do, I'll definitely be getting some of these secret packs to try and pull another copy there. But yeah, I don't know. I think this archetype definitely needs a little bit of help. It's just not good right now. With only 1 Water Enchantress, it's really hard to consistently get your Rite of Armistier, which is like kind of the whole point of the entire engine. So outside of, you know, wanting to use stuff like Illegal Knight and Wandering Griffin Rider as level 7 bodies, there's really not much of a reason to play Adventure in a lot of decks right now. So, okay, I think that actually covers everything as far as in-client stuff, and I don't think we actually have a whole lot in the way of leaks right now. I should have looked at this a little bit sooner, but let me go ahead and take a peek at like the news. Yeah, there's not really a whole lot here which makes sense because, we just had a pack release, and usually the news tends to kind of like trickle out following that. So now I want to go ahead and let's just pivot directly. I know I said this is going to be like the latter part of the video, but let's just go ahead and look directly at some deck lists, and let's talk a little bit about the meta and how it's shifted since Kashtira have come into the game. So I want to start with the Kashtira deck breakdown here on Master Duel Meta. Let's talk about the deck as a whole so far. So as you can see, there have been quite a few people reaching Master 1 and Master in general, getting win streaks with Kashtira. So the deck definitely does have some amount of merit, right? Like, it's not a deck that's just completely dead on arrival. However, if you look at some of the discourse online, you'll see I've seen quite a few posts on like the subreddit, for example, that are basically saying like, thank you everybody playing Kashtira because you're making the rank up a lot easier. I think the idea is that, like, a quote-unquote pure Kashtira deck, well, it might be like fine. It's definitely not at the same power level as a lot of the other top decks right now, like Tear Element, like Sprite, like Dragon Link, like Despia, like Sword Soul. It is, again, Kashtira is decent enough in its own right. It's just not quite, again, at that same power level there. So, in that regard, I would definitely say that Kashtira, in its current state, is a pretty firmly rogue deck. If you want to be really generous, you could maybe call it a Tier 3 deck, but I would definitely be more inclined to say that it's a rogue deck. Now, just because it is a rogue deck does not mean that the cards are bad in and of themselves. As predicted, Kashtira Fenrir is a card that individually is seeing play in a lot of decks. In fact, let's just go ahead and bring that up over here. Its popularity ranking is already in the top 50. The card hasn't even been out for a week yet at this point, mind you. At the time I'm recording this anyway. The time this goes up, it'll be a week. But yeah, I mean, as you can see, 70% of Tier Limit decks playing 2 copies. 80% of Punk decks playing 2 copies, 67% of Lab decks playing 2 copies, 71% of Sprite decks playing 2 copies, even Dragon Link is getting in there, and 36% of them are playing 2 copies. That's actually not a deck I expected to play Fenrir, but I guess it makes sense. Having a level 7 body is not too bad. The point, though, here is that Kashtira Fenrir, while it is, a very important card to the archetype of Kashtira, is not one that's relegated to the archetype of Kashtira, and indeed is seeing a lot of play outside of the deck. So even though it might not seem like it's worth it to play Kashtira as a deck right now, I would definitely not hesitate to get a couple of copies of Fenrir there. And even Unicorn as well. Like, I think honestly Unicorn is also like definitely not a bad card. I wanted to click on it to see its popularity ranking. Not quite as high as Fenrir, but as you can see, it's still in the top 100, which is pretty significant. And as you can see, this card also got hit in both the TCG and OCG. I kind of said this in one of my Kashtira deck profiles before, but I'll say it here again too. Don't sleep on Unicorn. Like, yes, Fenrir is the one that's really good, but in a lot of these decks that you would tech to Unicorn or to Fenrir, it is not an awful idea to play like one Unicorn as well. This card's insanely strong. Like, being able to snipe from your opponent's extra deck, depending on the deck, is backbreaking. It can even be game-ending, right? Those obvious, choices, Tier Limits. Being able to hit the Kiklos out of the extra deck is so devastating to them a lot of the time. They can make plays without the Kiklos, but it becomes a lot more difficult. Especially if they're not on, like, King of the Swamp or something like that. But even, like, a lot of Synchro variants that revolve around Chaos Ruler. You can hit the Chaos Ruler, and that will often hit the deck pretty hard. Sprite is a little bit more difficult sometimes because they, of course, play 2 Jet and 2, or not 2 Jet. Well, they do play 2 Jet, but I meant 2 Elf and 2 Gigantic. But you could hit the Sprend. That's like an okay option. If you're going first, you could hit the Zeus. That's definitely not a bad option because Zeus is very good against Kashtira. So, anyway, long story short, Unicorn, not quite as good as Fenrir, but it is an extremely good card. And again, I would not sleep on it. And I would consider it to generally tech in at least some amount of decks alongside Fenrir there. So, all in all, though, I was looking and I noticed that the Kashtira, at least the pure variant of Kashtira, doesn't really see a whole lot of like tournament success. It hasn't had any significant tops in the last week, which I think is quite interesting. We're about to go through some of the bigger tournaments that have taken place over the last week and look at their top results. And yeah, among them, you will not see a single pure Kashtira list. Again, you'll see some decks teching Kashtira cards, but as far as pure Cash goes, you know, it's a fine deck, but if you're looking for a highly competitive deck, I would not necessarily turn to this one. It's kind of my verdict on it. For the time being, gotta put that very heavy asterisk on there because, of course, once the second wave of support comes out, we will absolutely see Kashtira be a lot more powerful and consistent and just a tier 1 threat overall. So, alright, as mentioned before, now that we have kind of talked about excuse me, the Kashtira deck overall, let's look at more decks specifically that have done well in tournaments over the past week. First up, we have the Decade Meta Weekly having 108 participants, but keep in mind this is a single elim bracket, which is a best of 3. So here we have the top 16, lots of tier limits, that's to be expected, and then just a nice variety of decks thereafter. But again, you'll notice that Kashtira is not among them. I will say this much, that this tournament I think took place like the day that Kashtira came out. So to be fair, a lot of people might not have known exactly how to play Kashtira as a result and, you know, didn't enter with it. But still interesting to see not a single one here whatsoever. And right off the bat, even though we're not seeing any Kashtira decks, we are seeing the Kashtira cards. So there's Fenrir and Unicorn right there. Again, both very generally applicable tech cards. Excuse me, sorry, I'm gonna take another sip of water here. My throat's acting up a little bit. Probably from all the talking I'm doing from recording here. Anyway, so we have this Pendulum deck coming in first place, which is pretty rad. Pendulum Magicians, with not only the Kashtiras, but also, of course, the Valence Field Spell package there as well. Sunrika Avalon taking second place, also rocking a couple of Fenrirs. As I said before, definitely expect to see this card in a lot of decks. We have Exorcister in top 4, and then Dragon Link also taking up top 4. Not really a whole lot going on out of the ordinary as far as like text there, at least at a glance. I don't know, maybe there is something that I overlooked there, like a nice one of or something. Here we have a tier limit deck, fairly standard stuff, rocking the 2 Fenrir. It's playing Prosperity, which is kind of interesting, but I don't know. It's not that. I guess it's not that interesting. So, all right, another pretty standard tier deck. Oh, this is a spicy deck. That's right, I remember seeing this earlier this week. I pretty regularly like to look through the top decks that get submitted to Master Duel Meta just to like not only, of course, see what's doing well in tournaments, but also just kind of like see what people are playing around with. And this is my kind of deck. This is 60 card Punk Adventure tier limit, which is pretty rad. It's got a lot of different options for the extra deck there between all the different archetypes. It's not playing grass, even though we are a 60 card deck, which makes sense, right? Because like you might be thinking, why are we not playing grass? We want to mill our tier limit cards. And it's like, well, we don't really have that much trouble getting tier limit cards in the graveyard, right? And we definitely don't want to be milling any of our like Punk or Adventure stuff necessarily. Also rocking a couple copies of Unicorn here, as well as a couple of copies of Kashtira Birth, and even a Big Eye to support some amount of rank 7 plays. Oh, and the Ancient Fairy Dragon too for the Pearl Rhino. That's pretty nice. Cool stuff. Very cool stuff. All right, we have Morad here on... This is another 60 card pile. This one is playing grass. This is more of just a... I say just, but it is still pretty cool. It's a branded tier limit deck that is on 60 cards. Main decking a Twin Twister is very interesting for a best of 3 format there, but very nice. We have Golden with this Blackwing deck here. Nice to see Blackwing coming in there. We have Sky Striker. It's been a while since I've seen Sky Striker in a tournament top. Rocking the new Azalea there. But like I said earlier, Azalea is also just a nice general use extra deck monster as well, so... Cool stuff, cool stuff. Got another tier limit deck here. I actually think that's branded tier. It's got some out of branded cards there. Got Sword Soul here in top 16. We have Phantom Knight, tier limit Phantom Knights. I need to try this deck at some point. I don't know if it's the same person or not. I think it is actually, but I pretty regularly see this Phantom Knight tier limit deck doing well in the Decade Meta Weeklies, so seems like it's a pretty real deck, and it's been a while since I've busted out the Phantom Knights, so always nice to have an excuse for that there. Got more tier limits there, Runic Sprite. Oh, this is a Scareclaw Kashtira. This is what I thought was one of the more interesting. This is actually relatively close to a pure, I guess, kind of a Kashtira deck, although as you can see, it's playing a pretty heavy Scareclaw. This is arguably like Scareclaw slash Kashtira. It's a bit of both. But there is some amount of, I guess, Shangri-Era and Diablosis happening in some of these top cut decks, but again, not a solely dedicated Kashtira strategy, as we do have the Scareclaw package in full force here as well. So that's going to do it for the DK Meta Weekly. Now we also have the Factory Cup Season 3. This had 53 participants. First place was Dragon Link, looking fairly standard here. I'm noticing the Rocket Caliber seeing play in more and more of these Dragon Link decks. Makes sense, having access to an extra level 4 tuner is very nice there, especially with the Bestials and being able to go into these level 10 synchros here. Another Pendulum Magician. Seems like to be a pretty good week for the Pendulum Magician deck. Rocking a few Kashtira monsters, of course. After that, we have a 50 card. It's a 50 card with grass, kind of tier limit branded deck. You might be thinking 50 cards with grass seems a bit weird, but it actually makes sense at the same time, right? Like, tier limit, again, you don't need with grass to be milling like every single tier name. In fact, you definitely don't want to hit all three at the same time off of grass because you want to space out the different activations. So it actually makes sense why you want to play grass in 50 cards with a deck like this, where we want to hit tier names but not like a whole lot of them all at once. So yeah, cool stuff there. We have yet another tier limit deck rocking the Fenrir's here. Got tier limit rocking Fenrir's. Fenrir becoming again a pretty quick staple in a lot of decks, including the Sword Soul here. This Sword Soul deck's even playing a couple of copies of the Fenrir there. We have some Sunrika Avalanche shenanigans happening, as well as this last one. I think this is Morphtronic FTK. Is this the FTK? I'm trying to think how this deck actually FTKs you, though, and it might not be. Interestingly enough, though, we are rocking Dice Dungeon and Dimension Dice. You may be wondering, what are these cards doing here? But Dice Dungeon, I'm pretty sure, is here to exactly just search out Dimension Dice when it's activated. And then Dimension Dice allows you to special summon the Telefon from your hand. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much the main reason why these cards are played. But still, it's really cool to see a deck with the Dice Dungeon and Dimension Dice actually getting top 8 in a tournament here. So, oh, this Gizmek card. I wanted to hover over this because I could already see the comment in my head being like, what's that one card in the Morphtronic deck here? I'll hover over a few of them here. The Gadget Gamer and the Gizmek there, so you can kind of read some of these cards. I don't know exactly how this deck works, but it is, it's very cool. It's very cool to say the least there. So, all right, next up we have the Master Cup. It's a European tournament with 51 players that was taken by a 60-card branded Despia deck. No tier limit happening here. No grasses either. Wow, 60 cards, no grass. But makes sense because branded definitely has a lot of different cards that it wants to play, and is definitely one of those decks that can support 60 cards even without the grass there. All right, second place we have a... Oh, this is another... Is this the same person, actually? Let me see. It is in the Factory Cup that played 50 card... where was it? 50 cards... I think it is. Yeah, dope. Look at that. That's cool. It's the same person playing the same 50 card branded tier limit deck there. Very nice. Congrats on topping 2 different tournaments to the list. It obviously seems to be working very well there. Here's a Dragon Link with a couple of copy of Kashtira Fenrir there. This is an interesting one. This is Sprite, Tearlament, Runic. That is also teching some Kashtiras, the 2 Fenrir there. So, yeah, Sprite, Runic with a tier package in there. I guess they just wanted to have it all. But it definitely worked out for them. They got top 4 in the tournament here. So congrats there. Yet another Pendulum Magician. Wow, lots of, again, good week for Pendulum Magician. Nicholas, look at this deck. Look at this deck. This is exactly the kind of deck I love to see. This is a kind of punk bestial deck, but it's not like pure punk. We're more focused on our Assault Synchron as well as our 3 Shinobi Necro. I've actually thought of playing 3 Shinobi Necro in decks like this, although I will say I'm surprised we're not playing Salamangreat Almirage if we're playing 3 Shinobi Necro, because if you open Shinobi Necro plus a bestial monster, you can normal summon the Necro and then link it away for the Almirage, and then also banish it for the bestial, summon it back, and then sink into Chaos Ruler that way. But in any case, good stuff. I mean, look at this extra deck. Look at this deck. I just love this deck. It's exactly the kind of deck I would love to play. And I probably will be trying out a deck very similar to this in the near future as well. Thunder Dragons getting a top 8 finish here. Very nice. I love to see it from Thunder Dragons. They are a very, very cool deck there. Got another Kashtira tier limit deck, although they are playing 2 Kashtira Fenrir as well. So, last tournament results we're going to take a look at here are from the China Master Duel Taibo Weekly. Number 55 had 57 players here. There's a particular list I want to talk about here. So, in first place, we have Graphite with a 60 card branded tier list. They are rocking the 2 grass. I got a pretty standard tier limit list here. Oh, hey, look at that. We have another instance of Kashtira Scareclaw. That's actually pretty interesting. So, it seems like from tournament results that if you want to play the Kashtira cards, particularly the Diablosis, and, oh wow, this one's not even playing the Shangri-La, that's interesting, but seems like Scareclaw is actually a pretty underrated way to play tier limits, or, geez, I keep mixing them up, Kashtiras, as we've seen 2 decks have success with that. Okay, here is a Sword Soul list, looking fairly standard. Blackwing, another Blackwing top, that's pretty cool. We have Spiral seeing some success here. Another tier limit deck. Where is this list I wanted? This one. Okay. I don't know what to call this deck. I found someone who's even more insane than I am. I'm just gonna like kind of slowly scroll through this deck list and let you all take a look at it here. And I want to do this slowly because when I was looking at this deck, I swear every time I glanced at it, I found a new card I had never seen before. Like this Mana Dragon Zetron, this Gizmek. We've got a Galactic Spiral Dragon. We've got this Double Disruptor Dragon. We're playing a Metal Foes Fusion. And I'll show you the extra deck here as well. So, I'm kind of putting out a bulletin on this deck here. That was this top 8 deck from this tournament. If anyone knows how this deck works and or like has a combo guide, please send it to me. This deck looks really insane, like in a good way, and I really, really want to try it. I just don't know what's going on. Like, we're not even playing Phone of Albaz. We're playing Albaz the Ashen. Like, I have no idea what's going on with this list, but it got top 8, so it did well. This is a tournament with Swiss rounds too, so like it did well in Swiss and then won the top 16 round. And like this deck has to be correct, right? This deck has to have an insane line that I just don't see. So if anyone knows how this deck works, please, 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 please let me know. I want to know very, very badly. So. Alright, that does it for this tournament, and that's going to go ahead and do it, I think, for this video. So, again, we mostly just covered the impact that Kashtira has had here on Master Duel, which has not been quite as much as I think a lot of people were as a lot of people were anticipating, bleh, if I can speak there. But we are still seeing the ripple effects there, and we definitely will be seeing those in the upcoming weeks as a result as well. And yeah, I think that's going to go ahead and do it for this episode of This Week in Master Duel. Thank you all so much for watching. Let's just go ahead and move now to our outro. Alright everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end of the video like this. That means a whole lot to me. Not just personally, but it's also a great way of supporting the channel as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other means, you can of course feel free to comment and or subscribe right here on YouTube. I'm always looking to the comments section. You guys leave some pretty awesome feedback as far as like constructive criticism goes when it comes to deck building, gameplay, channel content, all that stuff. So feel free to leave your opinion down there. I will be sure to take a look at that there. And then subscribing is going to be the best ways to get notifications of when these videos drop. That does happen every day, by the way, so if you're looking for daily Master Duel content, you've come to the right place. And there are more places where you can get some daily Master Duel content. If you check out the description below, follow the top link over to my Patreon page. There for just $5 a month, which is as much as you pay for a booster pack, you'll find a lot more value than a pack full of filler over there. We've got some previews for content upcoming here on the channel. We've got some exclusive games that are only posted over on Patreon over there. We've got some Q&As, and then you can also have your name featured in this lovely credit sequence where I thank all of the people who are helping contribute over there on Patreon. It's a huge support to the channel, and it really means a lot as well. So thank you everyone who is donating that is featured here on screen. And again, you know, it's not just a pure donation, you do get some more daily Master Duel content over there just for being a part of the Patreon. But I think that's about all the time that I have for today's video. Once again, I just want to thank you so very much for sticking all the way to the end of the video. Again, it just means a lot as I do put a decent amount of work into getting these videos out every single day. But that's about all the time that I've got for now. So without further ado, this is XLex. I'm signing out, and I hope you have a fantastic day.